This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on the Huddle Sports Network. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Ed Smith. Got a couple big Pistons notes, and then we're going to talk about some Lions, their preseason schedule, and their organized team activities. Also, a little bit of Red Wings in the IIHF World Championship Tournament, and some Tigers as well. So, the Pistons. Our top story, the Pistons plan to hire New Orleans Pelicans general manager Trajan Langdon as their new president of basketball operations, according to Adrian Wojnarowski. And Gores is planning to make changes to the team. And we'll get to our second note in a little bit. But Ed, what do you think of Trajan Langdon?
It's an interesting choice, interesting pick, considering the fact that you got to look at the situation that he's coming from and how he helped construct the roster that we currently see in New Orleans. So let's look at the fact that he was the GM for the Pelicans since 2019. He had learned his way by being an assistant to David Griffin, who, as you know, helped construct the 2016 championship roster for Cleveland that had LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, many other pieces that won that title. So he learned from him, and under his tenure, now he was able to do things that were seen as obvious, such as drafting Zion Williamson with the number 1 overall pick, trading a clearly frustrated Anthony Davis when he did not want to be in New Orleans anymore, and was able to pull off, in my opinion, some good moves and good deals, such as when he traded Anthony Davis to the Lakers. He was able to get a group of players together, and assets. And essentially, when you look at what was the jewel of that asset and what has come to be the jewel of that trade, at least in terms of the New Orleans side of things, was Brandon Ingram. So essentially, you traded Anthony Davis for Brandon Ingram. And what you had done this past season or so, which was bringing in C.J. McCollum, from Portland. In addition to that, he was in charge of drafting some mini pieces that became a core contributing part of what eventually became their playoff run for the Pelicans this year. Now, yes, they were swept in the first round by OKC, but still, the Thunder were the number 1 seed for a reason. So we take into fact of the consideration the fact that he has history, not just in New Orleans, but also in history back in Brooklyn with the Nets, able to draft players such as Jared Allen and Karis LeVert, draft the players that he did when he was in New Orleans, being the obvious one to take the obvious selection by drafting Zion Williamson number 1. I think he's gotten good leverage, good production out of Brandon Ingram, and I like the move that he did to bring CJ McCollum in. Those moves were an essential part of getting the Pelicans to the playoffs for this season. The Pistons probably paid attention to that. They liked how he was able to help make this rebuild essentially in a 5-year plan, because I believe this is a 5-year plan that they're giving them, considering the fact that they are as rock bottom as you could possibly get. If there's some things that may want to cause some fans some trepidation, hey, there is a connection to Arn Tellem, during the fact that Tellem was an agent for Langdon when he was a player. Now, as for his playing days, he was a former Duke Blue Devil. He was drafted by Cleveland. Really had a bit of a cup of coffee in the NBA. He made his money more so playing overseas, playing in Italy, playing in Turkey, playing in Russia. He was a Euro League champion. He was a Turkish League champion, Italian League MVP. He was seen as a tremendous player, named as one of the players of the decade in terms of international basketball players. So compound that with how he's able to bounce that out into his front office tenure now. It's quite impressive a transition, as you can see. And now the Pistons trust him enough to where they want to get this position, give them this spot, give them this position of power that has been vacant since they last held it under Stan Van Gundy.
Yeah. So, all of Langdon's history is telling us that Langdon is actually pretty good,
qualified.
and
I'd say he's qualified and adequate to do this job. Now, granted, we had these same conversations or expectations or high hopes, I should say, about Troy Weaver when he came in, because remember, we were talking about the fact of he was in OKC and he was an assistant under Sam Presti, and he helped draft KD and James Harden, and he pushed to draft Russell Westbrook. And what have we seen him do here in Detroit, though? You draft Killian Hayes over Tyrese Halliburton. Yeah, you luck yourself into the number one pick, but anyone with that number one pick would have picked Cade Cunningham in a heartbeat. What have you done since then in terms of putting together the right pieces, the right assortment of players that goes along with Cade's skills and complements Cade? You haven't. Guys like Jaden Ivey are nice. Asar Thompson are nice. Duren, another very nice piece. But if you're not filling out this roster with competent players, competent shooters, and guys that can get at you as well on the defensive side of things, really make a real commitment to defense, it's just not going to show. No matter what of an effort that Cade Cunningham's going to give you, is not going to show. So that's going to be, I think, the first thing on the agenda for Trajan is, will he do the, in my opinion, necessary and logical thing is you fire the general manager that has been in charge of the program for the past 4 years, and the program has gotten consistently worse. So, to me, there should be a clear-cut answer of what you should do. But hey, that's not up to me. That's up to Langdon.
Yep. And speaking of Gores making changes to the team, according to Greg Eno on X at Greg Eno, he posted, quote, "Ownership is prepared to part ways." Sorry for the misspelling, folks. Let's see. Part ways with Monty Williams. Monty Williams. We can detect it very well. Age 52, according to sources, even though his deal still has $67.5 million guaranteed remaining. I think, he signed a 6-year, $78.5 million contract with incentives.
So the source the source that Eno may be quoting could have been from an Athletic article with James L. Edwards. So that could be where it originated, because I did see that specific site and writer be sourced in realgmhoops.com, something like that. That's where I read that story as well. So it could have been an exclusive from the Athletic that someone might have sourced or leaked info to them, probably from the Tom Gores camp, possibly. That, hey, this is how serious we are in trying to commit to this. But we'll see where it goes, because, you won't be too hard-pressed to find anyone finding sympathy for Monty Williams if they let him go. But the more pressing issue is, what do you do with your general manager? And I think the universally agreed-upon decision is you have to find a new one. So that should be the more priority, the bigger priority for Langdon to make with this decision. Not worry about the GM first, then you do the coach.
Who will be the new general manager? Only time will tell.
Mm-hmm.
The Lions' preseason schedule has been released, and let me look it up real fast. Plus, they had organized team activities, and Dan Campbell in his OTA press conference said, I don't see bust. I see Super Bowl. Of course, that's the objective. Of course.
Yeah.
And
Well,
the
while you look
preseason
at that,
schedule. Yeah, I got it.
well, I was going to say real quick.
Lions
I
at
was gonna
Giants Thursday, August 8th at 7 p.m. Lions at Chiefs in a preseason game this time. Saturday, August 17th at 4 p.m. And then Steelers at Lions. They're the only home game in the preseason. Saturday, August 24th at 1. And it's also the only preseason game in the early afternoon, to be honest, to make things clear.
Quick note on that before I get to that. I wanted to also make quick mention, piggybacking on the Pistons real quick. Do not be surprised if the Pistons may be intrigued in looking at the trading for Brandon Ingram. I know it's probably a polarizing topic to probably think about, considering the fact that, hey, what do we get with this draft pick? But it's the best you can do in this situation. Evan Sittery on Twitter mentioned it as a possibility, noting the fact that Ingram not only plays in New Orleans, where Trajan Langdon is coming from, but also he and Kate Cunningham have the same agent. So there's that. But back on to what the Lions with OTA. Well, first, the preseason schedule. If there's one thing that I can't worth note besides the fact that, hey, we only got one home game, but I don't care. Hey, 3 weeks. I'm glad. Get it out the way. Make sure nobody gets hurt. But also, with the Giants, it was reported that joint practices will be held between the two teams. Dan Campbell confirmed that himself. He did say there were some talks or plans to try to ask the Chiefs if they could be participating in this, but Andy Reid and the team declined. It's not what they usually do anyway. So, okay, whatever. Go to backup option. We'll go with the Giants. And they decided to accept, and that's what they're going to be doing. Right before the preseason starts, there will be joint practices being held by the Giants and the Lions.
All right. So,
other stuff. Was that there was other stuff to talk about in regards to OTAs, and we were just talking about the preseason schedule, because there's a lot to take a note, because this was the first week of OTAs. You mentioned the Dan Campbell quote of "Hey, I don't see bust, I see Super Bowl." That was probably one of the main quotes you saw coming out of that. Another one was in regards to what he said about Jameson Williams. When he was asked about, hey, in terms of who made improvements so far over the offseason or so far throughout the spring, he did mention JMO as, in his view, the most improved player in the offseason and a player that's a man on a mission. And he left it at that. And I'll get back to JMO in a second. But in regards to the OTAs, this was reported. The author's name slips my mind at the moment, but this was reported on PrideDetroit.com. They had mentioned that in terms of who looked what out there of OTAs, Goff and Hendon Hooker were essentially shaking off rust in the quarterback department. The running back room, they had pretty much a spot open since Jahmyr Gibbs was not available, at least for the first couple of days. So Simone Vaki, one of their new draft picks, who as we've mentioned before, can play both sides of the ball, he got a chance to work out more with the running back core, particularly with the RB1 groups. So he was able to interact himself, play with the starters a little bit, make some plays happen out in the open field. Speaking of running backs, there's already some clips leaking on Twitter of David Montgomery having a couple of nice gash runs himself. So always important to know that, hey, this is what this team's DNA is. We're a physical, upfront football team. We're going to show you on every single given play. This is our bread and butter. It starts and ends with our offensive line and our running game. So you love to see that happening. And they're preparing for that possibility of, hey, throughout the course of the season, you're probably going to see some different rotation with your lineups, or at least I should say with your offensive linemen. Injuries, whatever the case may be, something could happen to where, hey, you're going to have to go with this guy over that guy. And given the investments that they've made in the draft, especially drafting Giovanni Manu with left tackle, and of course with the offseason signings that they did, bringing back Glasgow, for example, bringing in Kevin Zeitler as well. You saw some rotations out there that included Colby Sorsdal, who they drafted, I believe, last year. he was playing more of tackle, which I believe is his natural position, than he was playing at guard. So you saw that being in there, and it helped also. Like I said, there was a number of players that weren't present for this first week. Decker and Ragnow being among them, so that's how you're able to see the different lineups and rotations. But it's good now because you want to practice seeing what works best for you here, so if you have to implement it in the regular season, you won't be lost. In terms on the defensive side of the ball, Levi Onwuzurike was able to get a chance to get some reps in with the first team defensive lineman, since you didn't have to see the likes of, like, say, DJ Reader, Josh Paschal, Marcus Davenport, James Houston. Also on that end, Matthew Betts, who they got from the CFL, he did some 7-on-7 reps at linebacker. They specified jack linebacker spot, so I'm not sure if that probably meant outside linebacker or 3-4 linebacker, or whatever the case may be. But that's how the defense looked on that end. Of course, you saw, the usual stuff from Aiden Hutchinson and Lee McNeil. That's your two best players on that defensive line, and they were able to make some impressive plays. But other than that, what was noteworthy was what people were talking about and what they were seeing out of Jameson Williams. I've already gave you the quotes from Dan Campbell, and from what Pride of Detroit was able to report from themselves, is that JMO, aside from probably a couple of plays where he probably missed a deep ball catch or something, looked very relaxed, very detailed in his route running. And if you can see it, and there's probably some clips already online, he even mentioned himself with talking to the media, he wants to have this breakout year for himself in terms of knowing that, hey, last year or the past 2 years, essentially, he has not had a chance to get in the full off season. Year one was dealing with the ACL recovery. Year two was dealing with the BS suspension for the gambling. Now, full off season, no injuries, no distractions, no BS. Getting a chance to fully integrate himself with Jared Goff, with the team, get that chemistry built up to where you're going to see more of the player that broke out in the second half of last year more often than not. So that's what JMO wants for himself. You can see it in how he's talking and how he's carrying himself from that standpoint. That's always great to see. And also at the end of a couple of days, they ran situational drills, like, starting from 35-yard line with 28 seconds left, one timeout, that sort of deal. So it's getting yourself into the motion and in the rhythm of knowing what to do when the time comes. It's all about preparation. Preparation and practice will prepare you for the moment.
Yep, that's true. And we'll keep our eyes on the OTAs and stuff. But moving on, the Red Wings in the IIHF, I'm trying to look them up.
Well, frankly, there's not too much to note, but there is one. If there is one thing to comment on, is the fact that Lucas Raymond has been absolutely shining for Team Sweden, and there's one big reason why they're in the semifinals right now. He is, as far as I'm concerned, if memory serves me correct, at the time of this recording, he's got 2 goals with a total of 7 points, and he looks like a guy that should be getting paid his money this offseason. Just saying.
Yeah, Jeff Petrie got one assist thus far.
Well, good for him.
Yeah. So, there we go. I got them. Lucas Raymond, 4 goals, 3 assists. Oli Mata, 1 goal, 2 assists. Petrie, as I mentioned, 1 assist. Trey Augustine, a 1-1 record, 929 save percentage. Alex Lyon, a 1-1 record, 940 save percentage. He was out for Petrie, Augustine, and Alex Lyon, all for Team USA.
Yeah, that was Lyon putting up those numbers. They noted that was before he suffered his injury. And as I mentioned before, Raymond is on Team Sweden.
Exactly. So that's that for Red Wings, and then finally the Tigers. They almost sweep the Diamondbacks last weekend in Arizona at Chase Field in Phoenix, but then they get swept by the Kansas City Royals, who have vastly improved, and they have developed their players, unlike the Tigers, who haven't. and then the Tigers returned home last night to get crushed by the Toronto Blue Jays of all teams, 9-1. But the Tigers bounced back with a 6-2 win over those Blue Jays. In a game where Colt Keith hit his first major league home run, Kerry Carpenter made it 6-0 with a 2-run home run. Riley Green with a leadoff triple in one of those Tigers hitting innings, and then Matt Vierling with a reach on an outfield fielding error between the left and center fielders. Green coming in to score and such. Zach McKinstry with an RBI ground out, which is not too bad, but they won that game despite Spencer Torkelson. They really did, because Spencer Torkelson continues to struggle and scuffle at the plate. Kenta Maeda earlier tonight, 5 scoreless innings after he was reinstated from the IL, and a corresponding move. A struggling Matt Manning was sent back down to Toledo, and Torkelson got a walk, but other than that, he was 0 for 3 with a strikeout, 207, 609 OPS. Maeda only allowed 4 hits in 5 innings, no walks, no runs, 1 strikeout. But really, it's about getting in scoreless innings, and his ERA is slightly lowered to 5.80. But Andrew Chafin has been struggling as a reliever. His ERA he allowed 2 runs on 4 hits earlier tonight, pushing his ERA up to 4.41. But Jason Foley was able to record his 11th save of the year. He only needed a ground out to Matt Vierling to end the game, and that was that. So, any thoughts?
A couple quick notes about this whole week in general. Kind of like the fact that we're able to at least score 13 to give some run support against for Skubal against the Diamondbacks, who himself had another solid week. He balanced out that win against Arizona with a disappointing performance, however, against the Royals. I think, what was it? He gave up 4 runs as well as a home run. So yeah, that was a nice little happy birthday present to me. Sarcasm. But as well, there was other players that was able to step up throughout the course of the week. Wenzel Perez, who we have not given much attention to over the course of this season, but he had himself a 4 RBI game during one of those games in Arizona. And for this season so far, which is his rookie year, he's had himself about 4 stolen bases, 3 homers, gotten 12 walks, and he's got 14 ribeyes. Batting around 300, he had a 6-game hitting streak coming into tonight that hasn't been snapped. But he's been one of those players that I've liked what I've seen from him so far, that I wouldn't mind seeing getting as much time as possible. Unfortunately, though, when you have other things such as rest your offense not putting anything together, Torkelson, who was nowhere near showing us the development compared to, say, Bobby Witt Jr., it's just very much disappointing and frustrating to see. You're seeing Alex Langdon set down. If he's not throwing tantrums on the mound, he's giving up too many walks.
He threw a ball against the netting.
Yeah, even Hinch had to come up to the mound and let him know, hey, cut that shit out. You know what?
Yeah, it was caught on camera too.
Yeah, I mean,
AJ Hinch trying to tell Alex Langdon to knock it off and stuff.
Right. Yeah, but lip readers, I'm sure we're salivating at that footage. But it's, hey, when you have a player who thought he was going to be consideration for the closer's position this year, and now you have him just sent to a position to where he's acting like a child almost. Yeah, you got to put him on punishment, put him on timeout, send his ass down so he can cool down for a little bit. That's what you got to do.
And so we did. And so they did.
I will say, though, I was expecting the worst when I saw Meatball Maeda being brought back up. But Manning, he's been having to struggle himself as of late. He's given up 3 runs or more in each of his last 3 or 4 starts. He needs some time down to get his head straight too. So you do what you can at this point, but I would have liked to have seen him also bring up another bat. Like say bring back Akil Baddoo or giving a guy like Henry Malloy a chance. But hey, I'm not in charge of the team.
Right, but the important thing is player development. Right now, the Tigers just don't develop their players much like the Kansas City Royals have, and that's why the Royals have gotten so much better than last year.
Mm-hmm.
And may I touch on Bobby compared to Spencer Torkelson?
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, Spencer's hitting barely over 200. Bobby Witt is barely hitting over 300 with an OPS of over 900. Spencer Torkelson's OPS barely over 600. That's not good.
It's pathetic,
Bobby
honestly.
Witt is much better than Spencer Torkelson in terms of stats, period.
In terms of stats, in terms of development, in terms of
Analytics.
nurturing, right? Analytics, but in terms of but also getting better development from his franchise, from his team, who knows what the hell they're doing. That speaks volumes above everything and anything else. Analytics are one thing, but if you're not helping him putting together the simple basics and fundamentals, then you're failing him. Or maybe he wasn't that good to begin with. And I'm starting to feel that way about Torkelson.
Yeah. So the Tigers are 23-27, 4th place in the American League Central Division, and they're probably going to be stuck there for like a long time.
They're 10 games back right now of Cleveland. Yeah, they're officially 10 games back now of Cleveland now. Well, it was 10 games. I'm not sure what Cleveland's result of their game was tonight, but the Tigers did win to at least
9.5. Close.
Yeah, at the
Guardians right now they lead the Los Angeles Angels 10-3 in the top half of the 7th inning in Anaheim. So apparently the Guardians are going to win that game, and they're going to stay 10 up on the Tigers.
Exactly. So when you look at that, it just speaks to a point to where if we didn't have the pitching that we have, we will be on the same level as the freaking White Sox. And I'm disgusted at the mere thought of that, at the visual of that.
Yeah, they just need better hitting. That's the one thing that the Tigers Tigers organization needs to further develop. Probably get better hitting, whether it's getting better hitting coaches or just reteaching all hitters the real basics of protecting the strike zone and what. It's pretty simple. It's very basic stuff. Even little leaguers can learn that.
Fundamentals always helps.
Yep. Simple fundamentals, that is. So, what all did we learn in this episode?
We learned a few things. We learned that the Tigers are just, if they're not careful, they're going to find themselves walking aimlessly in an abyss, just like the Pistons are doing right now. We learned that, speaking of the Pistons, they're trying to find some way to get out of the darkness and into the light by hiring Trajan Langdon. We'll see if he's going to follow through and actually be allowed to fire Troy Weaver or not, and if possibly replace Monty Williams. That we're not of certain for knowing. We'll also be able to look out to see if they're going to try to get the deal together with Brandon Ingram. Anything can happen. Langdon has connections to New Orleans. There's some uncertainty of Brandon Ingram's future in New Orleans with the Pelicans. We'll see where that goes. And not to mention the fact shares the same age with Cade Cunningham. We learned about from the Red Wings side of things, Lucas Raymond is a player that is playing like he wants to get paid this offseason. Not next offseason, this offseason. And we learned from more about the Lions preseason schedule. We learned from what we've seen so far of OTAs. Some players have got to shake off some rust. Some players have got to take advantage of the time and the reps that they're getting with certain units on the squad. And frankly, like Dan Campbell said it best, I don't see bust, I see Super Bowl. So that speaks to the mindset and the objective of what this team wants to do for this year. It is absolutely all eyes on the Super Bowl. It's absolutely the focus of trying to get a Lombardi trophy. We've heard it from Dan Campbell. We've heard it from the owner herself, Sheila Forhat. So it's just a matter of what can they do? What can this team do to put it all together on the field?
Exactly.
And also, one last brief note. I guess you could call it like a late file news type of thing. It was reported apparently by BlueBy90.com that according to excerpts from an upcoming book, this is from John Talty and Armin Kantayan, it is The Price, What It Takes to Win in College Football's Era of Chaos. CBS Sports had gotten some experts that said Jim Harbaugh had told people close to him he wanted to remain at Michigan. He wanted to stay as head football coach, but he did not trust athletic director Ward Manuel to be his advocate. And it goes on to say, to quote the book specifically and directly, quote, during a 2-day getaway with his wife Sarah off San Diego coast, Harbaugh unloaded to longtime friend Todd Anson. He told Anson he wanted to remain at Michigan, but believed Manuel, no matter his public pronouncements, was not the advocate he needed in his corner, particularly in front of the Board of Regents. He also raged against Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti, who before the 3-game Big Ten suspension had promised Harbaugh to meet with him in Ann Arbor and brief him on what the conference was doing, only to stand him up. Through a spokesperson, Petitti declined an interview request for the book. So the day after his outburst to Anson, Harbaugh had an initial interview with the Chargers. Afterward, his tone had softened, and he leaned forward towards taking the NFL job that, if offered, he dialed down on the Manuel rhetoric, no longer interested in a potential legal battle and fighting people he later said were, quote, gunning for me. It suggested an attitude and tone that his days in Ann Arbor were numbered, end quote. So to me, it speaks about a number of things. It speaks what I and frankly many people within the Michigan circles have been talking about in the past few weeks or days and weeks leading up to that decision or that announcement that Harbaugh was not coming back. Was that, yeah, he wanted to stay. He absolutely wanted to stay, but he did not trust Ward Manuel. He didn't think he was going to be in his corner. And like I said, the issue with the Big Ten and specifically with the commissioner Tony Petitti suspending him the way that he did, not briefing with him when he said he was going to, and frankly, Harbaugh having, I guess you could say, a sixth sense of, between the investigations, the Counter Stallions thing, the Burgergate thing, and whatever potential stuff that the NCAA was trying to bring down on, simply because of the fact that it was against Harbaugh, and Harbaugh, who himself has been a vocal critic of the NCAA in the past, and in terms of wanting to make sure that the players get more of a fair share of what they're getting and what they're getting now, that would probably explain the meritus of Harbaugh's quote of, "Hey, people are gunning for me." So it's not a surprise to see how it all played out, of why he eventually took the job with the Chargers. But it does make you wonder, what if he had decided to stay? It does always make you wonder.
Wow. So there's some inside information there on Jim Harbaugh, between Jim Harbaugh and Ward Manuel and Tony Petitti. So that is another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. I'm Taylor Phillips. He's Ed Smith. Follow the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Michigan_Truth. Like its Facebook page and subscribe to its YouTube channel at the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Like our videos and on all notifications on the bell icon. Follow it and listen to it in audio form on Spreaker. Follow me on X, TikTok, and Instagram at DT2Phillips, and on YouTube as well at DT2Phillips. Follow Ed Smith on X, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at EdSmith313. Business endorsements go to Athletico Physical Therapy on Woodward and Ferndale, the B4 Foundation, Cali Tickets. Call Mark Goldman at 877-225-8425 or visit CaliTickets.com. Creative Embroidery of Cadillac, for designing the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast logo on my long sleeve shirt and t-shirt. Cuts by Melanie in Lake City. I will have a haircut Tuesday at 8 a.m. over there. The JC Youth Foundation. Let's roll with it. Rolled ice cream in Cadillac. No flavor of the week this week, but I did try one of their other 15 flavors on their menu, which is the Tutti Frutti Little Richard with the fruity pebbles and the maraschino cherry on top of the whipped cream. Very, very sweet. Like their Facebook page, follow them on TikTok at the Food Mafia LLC and on Instagram at the Food Mafia Rolled Ice Cream. Northern Star Event Rentals in Cadillac, 231-884-8819 on Facebook. Union Barber in Birmingham and in Ferndale. United Food Service Solutions of Grand Ledge, Michigan. United Mobile Power Wash and Dry Ice Works in Southfield, and Well-Being with Catherine Palms. The Michigan Sports Truth Podcast is a presentation of the Huddle Sports Network. We'll be back next week. Till then, for Ed Smith, I'm Taylor Phillips. We observe and detect the truth about Michigan sports because the truth is out there. Ta-ta, hit him with a high.
Take care and stay safe, everyone.
This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.